Hello and welcome back, everybody. Today I want to talk about the Blend If sliders. Now this is a tool that you could find in the Layer Styles panel when you open that up, and it enables you to do some pretty advanced levels of blending between two layers of an image. But let me show you what I'm talking about here. On this example image I have, the topmost layer, layer 2, is my gradient from black to white. Now I'm going to open up the Layer Styles panel, and underneath Blending Options, looking down towards the bottom, you'll see the Blend If section here. Now you have four options: gray, red, green, or blue. You're going to find yourself mostly sticking with the gray. Sometimes you can work with the three different channels, red, green, or blue, if you want to experiment with certain kind of effects. But that's entirely up to you. You'll find yourself mostly in the grays. Now these two sections here with their sliders, you'll see going from a range of black to white, and the numbers going from 0 through 255. Underneath that, the same thing, black to white, 0 to 255. And on this topmost part here, it is labeled as this layer. And what that means is anything that you adjust with the sliders is going to take into account the levels of black to white on the layer that you are currently on. Underneath that, you'll find underlying layer. And what that means is, as you play with those sliders, what you're working on, your current layer, will be affected by everything underneath. Not just the one layer directly below, but anything that is visible underneath your current layer. With this, the layer I have selected here, we're going to play with this layer at the moment. Now as I grab this tab here on the left side and drag it towards the right, you'll find that it is blending or erasing the darkest areas. The further I pull it, the more that disappears. Because what the tab is showing me is that at this current level, we'll say 55, from there, from that point, anything at 55 or towards the left of it, anything at that level of gray or darker is now being blended out of your image. Anything to the right of that still shows. If I wanted to do the same thing with this tab on the right side, on the white, I will click and drag that to the left. And this is telling Photoshop that from that point at 205, anything from there and to the right of it, anything brighter than that level of gray, is going to be blended out of your image. What you'll see is there is a rough edge as Photoshop is trying to decide what's going to be visible and what will not be visible. But what you can do with these tabs is press down your Alt or Option key on a Mac, and you will click that tab, the black one, and now it will be split into two. And as you move the right part of the tab over further to the right, you'll see it gives you a much softer blend. This is telling Photoshop that the leftmost part of that tab, from that point and anything to the left of it, is blended out. Anything between these two halves of the tab is blended out slowly and more gradually until you get to the rightmost part of the tab, where everything is fully visible from that point forward to the right when considering the blacks of this image. On the right side, we want to do the same thing with the white tab. I'll hold down the Alt or Option key, click and drag that split for a smoother fade. Once again, now this is telling Photoshop that from this part, the rightmost part of the white tab, and everything to the right of it is blended out. in between the two halves of the tab, it is blended out more gradually and slowly, giving you, as you see here, a much smoother blend on both the top and the bottom of my gradient. And you could do the same thing with the color gradient over here. We open up the blending options, and as I was saying earlier, you have the four options: gray, red, green, or blue. You can affect each particular channel. And we're working with this layer as well, starting from the right side. I'm going to grab that tab and move that slowly over, seeing as it fades away the red. And if we were to move it all the way to the left, you'll see that it has taken away every bit of red from that gradient and everything along with it. Everywhere that there was red blended into the other color, green, it has taken it all away. Let's move this back to about here. Then I'm going to hold the Alt or Option key, click and drag that split tab over now to give you that much smoother blend. And I can also grab this tab over here and move that as well in case I need to adjust it any further. And you could do the same with all three of the colors here. I'm going to play with the green, drag that a little. Since green is the center of the gradient, it's going to start pulling the pure green right out of the center of it. It's going to blend out both upwards and downwards as it fades off into the other two colors. And I'll split that for the smoother fade, and then move to the blue channel and start to fade away the blue. And that's how you work with the blend if sliders for these simple examples here when you're working under the tab, under the section called this layer. Now with the second example here, now we're going to play with those blend if sliders, but instead of using this layer, we're going to be working on the section called underlying layer. And what that means is anything that is visible underneath this layer, anything underneath our black to white gradient, is going to be what affects the layer that we're on. So if I grab this tab on the left and start to drag that over towards the right, the darkest parts of the background of the image are going to start to show through. They're going to start to blend in from the deepest shadows and blacks all the way to the darker grays and into the lighter grays as far as I want to drag it. And then I can do the same thing with the whites. Click and drag that over to the left, and the whites will start to show through. Much like the earlier examples, you can hold down your Alt or Option key and split those tabs for a smoother blend until you get the effect that you want. Now, once you OK this, if you've ever felt that you wanted to go back and change them, you don't like what you've done, as long as you see this symbol here, it lets you know that the blend if sliders have been adjusted. You can double click that symbol and reopen this panel here and put everything back to the way you found it, or adjust it to any level that you find desirable. And the same thing can be done with the color gradient here. Making sure that the blacks and the darkest parts of the image start to show through, and the lighter parts of the image, until we achieve our desired effect. Now in this part of the example here, this is something a lot of people tend to use the blend if sliders for, and it works very well. When you want to take some text, put it on a surface, and make it look like it is blended into the image, sort of faded away with whatever texture and grit might be on the layers underneath. For example, this stone wall. If If I want to take this text and make it look like it's more realistically part of the wall, I'm going to want to use the blend if sliders. That's the easiest way that I've found to use here. So we're going to open up the blending options, and we're going to work with the underlying layer section of blend if here. And we first want the darkest parts of the cracks to start to show through. So I'm going to grab that tab and move it over to the right a little bit until we see some of the text fading out. And then we can split that by holding the Alt or Option key and getting the softer blend from underneath. And we also have some of the brighter whites that are around the cracks. We're going to want to bring those through too. So we grab that tab and move that over to the left until we see some of the white that we want to come through. And holding down our Alt or Option key again, split that tab for a smoother blend. Let me really get up in here. And you see over here where the whites of the plaster, what they were trying to use to fix these cracks and the weathering, and some of the darker areas of the cracks themselves are showing through. You can adjust at any time if I want more of the white to show through or less. I'm just going to pull back that white a little bit, or the rightmost part of that tab back a little bit, so it's a much smoother blend for my tastes. We'll keep the blacks as they are and click OK. Now the same can be done not just with text but with other images on top of your background. So let me turn off the text here and open up this layer, make it visible. I want to make that blend in a little bit with the background beneath it. So I'm going to open up the blending options and also working with underlying layer, doing the same thing, finding the balance that I want of the blacks coming through and the lighter parts of the image, the whites around the cracks as well, until I find the balance that I like. Now, before you were to click OK here, you can also change the blend mode of this layer with the woman on it before you exit. So you can test out the different types of blend modes to go along with the blend if that you had been tweaking until you find the one that you like best. I'll just throw this one into, say, hard light for now. But just to show you that you can play with your blend modes along with the blend if sliders until you find your desired effect, and then click OK. You'll notice here on the layers panel with layer 1 selected, you'll notice that up top that the blend mode has changed to hard light. You don't have to go back into the layer styles panel to change that. You can put it back to normal over here if you wish. And for another example with text, let's say you were playing with a magazine cover idea. Some of those, you'll find that the title of the magazine will appear to be behind the subject of the photograph. And one of the ways to do that is using the blend if sliders. With this particular example, it's best when used with a flat background around your subject, like this black background around this man here. And we're going to zoom in a little bit. And with our text layer selected here, open up the blending options. And we want the words tough guy to remain appearing in the areas filled with black, although disappearing where his head is. So we're not going to touch the black section here on underlying layer. We're going to move towards the tab to the right, click and drag that over until you see the letters start to fade away, making sure to hold down your Alt-Option key and use that split for the smoother transition until the lettering has perfectly faded behind his head. Click OK, and you would have the beginnings of your magazine cover. In another example, what you want to do here is, say, blend in this image of the planet Mars, which I had gotten from the NASA website, into the background image here. So first I want to transform this down a little bit. I'm going to move it up near the top to, say, about here. Now, for this, instead of having the underlying layer come through, we're going to work with this layer only. So we want to get rid of the black around the planet Mars. We're going to click and drag the leftmost tab just a couple of bits over, and immediately all that black is gone. A little bit more, and it will be constrained more tightly to the planet. Holding Alt-Option and splitting for gentle fade until you have it exactly where you would like it to be. Click OK. Now you see here in the Layers panel, under Layer 1 you see the planet with the black still around it. You've only erased the black, causing the illusion that you've erased the black. It's still there. You've non-destructively altered your layer. But let's say you wanted to be done with it and have your layer now without that black around the planet. You're going to create a new layer above your layer with Mars. Right-click Layer 2 and select Merge Down. Now that you've merged that blank layer on top of the one with Mars, anything that has been erased before is now permanently gone. And you have now your planet Mars on its own layer. And there's one other thing I want to show you with this image here. The blend of sliders don't work with only other images and objects and gradients that you want to bring in. The blend of sliders work with your adjustment layers. So let's say I wanted to create an adjustment layer and only affect a certain part of this image. We're going to make sure that the background layer is selected and active. We're going to choose Hue and Saturation. Now, just for this example's sake, we're going to colorize this and choose a green color, bring down the saturation a little bit, and drop the lightness just slightly. And this has now affected the entire image. But with our adjustment layer still selected, we're going to open up the blending options for the adjustment layer. And we're going to work with underlying layer. Now I want it to show in this patch of sandy area here, which means anything that's kind of darker, since this seems to be the lighter part of the image, I'm going to fade that out. So from the underlying layer section, I'm going to grab that tab on the left and drag it to the right until we see that green hue start to fade away from the darker parts of the image. And then split that tab until we get a nice fade into the area. And as earlier, I want to change the blending mode on this. So I'm just going to turn this to a, oh, I didn't like that. I'm going to go with color. And now we have the green area affecting only the sand. You can also take down the opacity until we get it exactly where we want it. And just know that this can be used with any of the adjustment layers with varying effects. You'll have to experiment with each one. There are a lot of different ways that you can play with the blend of sliders with each of these adjustment layers. And some will achieve some results that are completely unexpected, and some just might wow you with you saying something like, "Oh wow, I can't believe that I can do that." So have some fun with that. Experiment with different images and layers you want to pull together using your blend of sliders, and see how much fun you could have with it. It will open up a whole new world of possibilities to you. And if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give me a thumbs up, click that you like it, and if you want to see more, subscribe. But I hope you had a good time, hope you learned something, and I want to thank you, and I will see you next time.